So first of all, my name is David McGill. I'm part of the marketing team here at Scorebuddy. I'm your host today. So today, as I just mentioned there, we're going to be talking about 1 million AI evaluations. And as you can see, we have Brian and we have Paul on the line as well. And they're going to be talking through, and they've been heavily involved in the project. And I'll hand you off to them very shortly. But before we get there, it's always good to see an audience breakdown. So we've well over 230 odd people sign up today. This gives us a glimpse of where the folks are dialing in from. So as usual with our webinars, we get the majority of people dialing in from the UK and the US, and then the rest are from various different locations, obviously the contingent from Ireland and other locations too. In terms of the industries, there are typical industries that we see would be around education and financial services, tech, and so forth. So it's a typical breakdown that we would see at ours. So it's usually around 50 to 60% from US, UK, and then again 20 to 30% each from technology, financial services, and that. So always a good to see that. And again, thanks for all of you who've dialed in today. So I want to now introduce our speakers. So Paul, if I can ask you to unmute your line and give the audience an introduction, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. So Paul Lawless, I'm head of product and UX here at Scorebuddy. I've been with Scorebuddy just over a year now, and during that time I've kind of been delighted to work on our AI auto scoring project and some of our new AI services. So not a typical kind of UX type project, but really interesting to figuring out and understanding how to deliver the experience to our users of this kind of really powerful new technology, and to find the balance between allowing configuration and not being too restrictive without making it overly complex for the users. So it's been a good journey so far.
Great, thanks Paul. It'd be interesting to see what you have to say. I know you've spearheaded a lot of what we see today in our Scorebuddy AI offering, so it'd be really interesting to see what you have to say in a bit of all of our customers that have interacted with those 1 million interactions. It'd be great to see what you have to say. Thanks, Paul. Brian, if you can unmute your line too and give your introduction, please.
Hi everyone, I'm an account manager here at Scorebuddy, and I've been with the company also for about a year now. Before that, I was with a healthcare company through the pandemic, working as account manager, and in years gone by, I was at a BPO working as a subject matter expert and quality analyst for a contact center for a large social media company which you'll all be familiar with. I've been working closely with Paul and the team in the last few months on a lot of the kind of initial trials for our GenAI product here, and working hard to try and understand how to take the tool and make it relatable to QA teams on the day-to-day level, and to see what kind of insights we can drive and extra benefits that we can create with a tool like this. So it's been very exciting, and really looking forward to hearing what you guys have following this webinar, and some ideas as we try and push together and see how automation can really transform our QA projects.
Super. Thanks, Brian. Great experience there. I know a lot of your clients were heavily involved in the trials. And also your background as well, as you said, in that social media company, so you're quite familiar with the industry in general. So great experience there. Super. Okay, so that's the introductions done. I have one more. Well, there's a couple of slides. So the focus on the structure of this is that we're going to be kind of setting the scene. So kind of the journey of QA and why it matters, and then we'll introduce the whole AI. Paul will then cover his journey, our journey through over the last couple of years, our journey getting to 1 million AI evaluations. We'll talk about the product team and the work they've done in the background about that. And what they have done is they've actually, Paul and Brian have summarized our learnings into five key learnings, and we'll go through each of those. But we also want to hear from you. So what I'll do is I'm going to jump onto a poll now. We have two polls, so we won now. We won, I think, between the third and fourth lesson But importantly, we also have time at the end for Q&A. So if it's your first time within the platform, there is a questions pane within GoToWebinar. Please use that. Don't wait till the end as you come up with a question if you're interested in learning any of it, more about any of these learnings. If they don't cover it, please ask. We have time at the end dedicated to that. So we're going to launch a poll. So I'm going to flip over now and launch that poll. So the poll is, let me just find that. First one is, are you using AI as part of your quality? Are you currently using it as part of your quality assurance process? So I'm going to launch that poll now. You should see it on the screen. So there's 5 possible answers. You either yes, extensively, to some extent. It's great to see it populating. And Brian and Paul, hopefully you can see that appear and add up there. So I'll ask Brian and Paul to comment on that at the end. So I'm just going to give it, I see about just over 50% of people have voted. So I'll give it another, people are really thinking about this. So again, hopefully you're engaging in this. We'd love to hear from you. This will hopefully guide some of Paul and Brian's commentary as they go through this. So over 600, I'll give it another 10 seconds. I think we're more or less done now. So almost 70% of people. Okay, I'm going to end the poll, almost 70%. Yeah, and I'm going to share the results. So, okay, so no one's used them extensively. So we have about 30% of people are using to some extent. Over 50% no, but they're planning to implement it. Obviously, that's why you're here today and learning from Brian and Paul of what we learned. 11% are not no, and they're not currently considering it. Okay, so maybe that's something in the future. 5% are unsure. Paul or Brian, are you surprised by this? Is this in line with what we're hearing from our current clients and other prospects that we're talking to?
I think look at a first glance, looking at them, the no but planning to implement it aligns with what we've seen with many of our customers to date. There's a big appetite for at least exploring these, and we've seen good uptake of our AI trials. I would say that probably the one I wouldn't have expected was the 30% yes to some extent, that they've kind of actually used AI in their current quality assurance process. I wonder if we asked that question 3 months ago or even 6 months ago, what the answer or the breakdown would be, I think, and that's a sign of how quickly things are evolving in this area.
And maybe a good segue there is, again, we have a comments there, or if you have any commentary around that, those 30%, maybe you can give us a bit of insight into that. Have you just opened up ChatGPT and put some stuff in? So it'd be good to hear back from you as well. When you say to some extent, are you trialing another, is it Claude or is it ChatGPT or something else, some other models? To what extent have you tested that? Thanks, Paul. Brian, anything to add into that?
Yeah, similarly, I'm interested in finding out from those who've answered that they're not considering it and that they're unsure. What is it about maybe the current offering or your knowledge of the topic that is preventing you from exploring this further? Hopefully there's a few learnings that we're going to uncover today that will help help ease some of those concerns that you're bound to have around rolling out automations, especially for something sensitive like quality and compliance issues. So there's a lot that we can share, and that we'd love to talk to people about in the future as well, about addressing these concerns and seeing if there's ways we can mitigate it for certain things within the quality process.
Excellent. Okay, well, listen, thanks to everyone for the input on the poll. I'm going to close that now, and we have another one later on. So what we'll do is now I'm going to hand you over to both Brian and Paul, and we have a couple of slides before we jump into the 5 lessons learned. So Paul and Brian, I'll hand it over to you to take from here, please.
Thanks, David. So we have here, what's the importance of quality assurance? There's very few of you on this webinar today that I need to educate on that. We've got presumably mostly quality assessors and analysts on the call, and it's not any surprise that we consider QA to be the backbone of any successful contact center. What you've got is an insight into customer interactions and their sentiment and agent performance. Also, what products are performing well, what areas of the service that we provide to customers need improvement or have kinks in the system and so on. So getting really good QA is essential to feeding back information into the rest of the business and improving processes throughout the operation. The problem here is that in the past, manual QA is really costly. It's time consuming. And we get very little coverage for a huge amount of effort that goes into these quality checks. Across the industry and across our customers, we find that the average coverage is between 2 and 5%. That's 95% of all of your customer interactions are going unchecked. And we're just hoping and trusting that we're checking enough cases and we're flagging enough issues within the small amount of work that we're able to do manually. This means that we're not getting access to all of those customer interactions. Maybe we have to cherry pick, and we're saying, oh, I'm just going to QA the low CSAT or the low NPS customers or billing issues, things like this, and we hope that everything else is okay. And at the same rate, our QAs, the people working on this, are usually the busiest people in the whole organization in terms of the contact center. I've never met a QA who wasn't always spinning plates and multitasking and had their week full of one-to-ones and various different other tasks. So to be able to increase that coverage in QA comes at a huge expense. And what we're seeing is that AI is giving us the ability to boost that coverage without massively increasing the cost. And in boosting coverage, what we're doing is having a big effect on not only the customer satisfaction levels, but also our agents. And we've all dealt with agents in the past who feel that they're just really unlucky with the cases of theirs that get pulled and checked. Oh, this isn't representative of my actual performance. You've just picked a bad batch of my cases this month. That's why my score is poor. We've all had these conversations and seen these excuses. What we get from AI and boosting those levels of coverage up to 100% in some cases, what we get is an increase in the level of fairness and accuracy. So agents can be reassured that all of their cases now are getting checked, and that the feedback that they're getting from superiors and from the QAs is accurate and representative of their real performance. So we've seen in other factors of customer service that AI has been really great at helping agents to individualize support that they deliver, be it enabling them with support systems, providing them with knowledge base articles based on the conversation, or lifting the load of those simpler conversations through chatbots and allowing them to spend more time on the more complex issues. We want to apply the same now to QA. Lift the load of the repetitive actions in QA and allow those professionals with their great product insight and operational knowledge and use those skills more often rather than just going through QA and repetitive checks and clicks of buttons. And that's really what we're trying to drive here, and that we found is that the expectations of the QA are going to shift with the introduction of AI into scoring. What we'll get is more time for them to apply their knowledge and deliver that insight and feedback to the agents and to the wider business. This is going to be really valuable for various different reasons, which we'll go through later on. I'll move to you, Paul. Oh, you're on mute.
My bad. So yeah, in terms of our journey to the 1 million evaluations that we have carried out, so really it started with the release of ChatGPT. I think was the Gen AI model that started it all. Was the first out there, and we saw the opportunity there, and we wanted to kind of quickly implement Gen AI scoring into the Scorebuddy product and validate with our existing infrastructure and workflows how these Gen AI that showed big promise could actually work in the real world. So we kind of tried to get our AI auto scoring beta version as prepared as quickly as possible, and really to satisfy the demand of early adopters and customers were starting to talk more and more about AI. We released the kind of AI trial. So we've had lots of customers trial our AI service and in different phases, many different industries with different needs. And I guess here we are to share the kind of major things we learned across all of those trials. So with that said, we can maybe move on to the next slide there, Dave. So the first learning, the importance of configurability in Gen AI solutions. And I guess this kind of references the fact that each customer, and certainly we've seen this in our trial so far, each customer has different needs and expectations of what can be done. Just to take a step back and set the scene a little bit, until fairly recently, AI in quality assurance was mostly kind of used for topic detection and sentiment analysis. So old, in inverted commas, if we can use that term, AI technology like natural language processing and machine learning was used to kind of just find words and synonyms and phrases throughout interactions to kind of detect topics and sentiment. These were often kind of expensive, certainly for you to roll out yourself, very complex, very expensive, and quite limited in what they did. In the last 18 months, however, Gen AI has come onto the scene. And just to kind of give a little bit of detail about what makes them different. So these large language models and generative AI work out of the box. It's not just simple phrase detection. They kind of understand context, and I guess understands is in quotes there a little bit, and they're able to generate and predict likely responses to the questions they're asked. How they work is quite simple. So they're trained on massive amounts of text data. So this is books, articles, websites, and other written material, and it effectively kind of measures up to the entire internet. If you were to take all the text on the internet and clean it up, it's that kind of volume of data. And that training gives them an understanding of language patterns and context and semantics so that they can kind of understand and generate relevant responses. You interact with these models via prompts, and this is really your input or instructions to the AI, the Gen AI, and the responses. It generates responses quite simply, actually, and interestingly, by predicting the next word in a sentence based on the input they receive. So the context you've given it and the question you've asked, it kind of says to itself, based on the data it's looked at or been trained on, it kind of says, I see a pattern in this text that's similar to things it's seen before. And it knows that in those things it's seen before, the next likely words are whichever, and it's literally doing that on a word by word basis. There's one interesting thing to note here is that these models are designed designed to always produce a response. So they are generative AI. They'll always generate a response, even if they lack information needed to provide kind of what we would class as a correct answer. So their main objective is to just predict the next most likely sequence of words based on the input, and they'll generate something rather than staying silent or admitting that they don't know. And that's kind of important when we talk about QA, because often their confident sounding responses might actually not be accurate or relevant in some cases. So then when we talk about configurability in these large language models, generally these models offer very limited configurability. There is retraining is possible of the model, but it's hugely expensive to effectively retrain a model. It's complex, and there's mixed results reported of whether actually you have as good a chance of kind of messing up the model as you have to improve the model. Where configurability is possible is in the prompt. And so crafting the right prompt is essential, how you ask the question. Asking a simple question is easy, and if you've used tools like ChatGPT, you'll have experienced the impact of this. You can ask a simple question, but achieving kind of high quality, consistent responses, you need to be very structured in how you ask to do what you need it to do. And so for us, the prompt is created, and every time we want the LLM to do something, well, this is in general, and you'll find many guides online of how to structure a prompt to achieve the best results. For us, there's really 4 components that make up our prompt when we are looking to, in the QA space, ask questions. Really, it's setting the role is the first thing. So you kind of, when you're creating a prompt, you want to tell the Gen AI how to act. So in this case, you would specify something like, you are an expert quality assurance analyst, and I'm going to send you some questions. The next is to supply the content. So in this case, in the case of quality assurance of interactions, it's that actual conversation between the agent and the customer in as much detail we can give. The next is the task. So what you actually want the LLM to do. This is the most important piece that's relevant here, and I'll explain that in a second. And finally is the answer. So it's important we specify in a prompt how we want the Gen AI to answer, and specifically for us, so that we can actually process that result reliably and convert it into a score in our system. So in Scorebuddy 1, 2, and 4, so the role, content, and response are fairly fixed and controlled. The conversation is conversation, so that's the content, and the response we really control, so that we ensure we're able to map it. Where the power is in the task. That's where the opportunity to configure or influence the prompt, and we make that possible via kind of fully customizable AI scorecards. And so these scorecards are built on top of our existing scorecards within Scorebuddy, and we effectively inject that entire scorecard into the prompt each time we want the AI to score. And this really allows, using the scorecard really allows our users to fully customize what they want the Gen AI to answer. So including whatever questions you want to ask, giving guiding tips and contextual comments and causes, along with fully customizable answer choices, so you can determine how you what answers you want the Gen AI to select from. So that all gives customers the full capability to influence Gen AI scoring and align precisely with their specific needs. So I guess the key takeaways in this first learning is, while there's little configuration in the Gen AI models themselves, the power is really in the prompt. The outputs and responses are largely dictated by the quality of the input. It's really a case of garbage in, garbage out. If you ask a poor question, it'll likely give you a poor answer. And in general, for Scorebuddy, our goal initially was to kind of maximize the quality achieved using the foundational models to achieve the highest quality outputs without kind of going down the route of expensive training. So that's a summary, I guess, of configuration and how it is or isn't possible within Gen AI. Maybe Brian, is there anything you want to add to that?
Just really that maxim of garbage in, garbage out is going to be something that the viewers should keep in mind now for the rest of the webinar, because it's not necessarily getting too worried about the technical aspects of it. Just think about, what questions do I need to ask, and how do I need to ask them to get useful insights.
Okay, thanks, Brian. So moving on then, and really starting to talk about the do's and don'ts of asking questions. And this is zooming into that task piece of the prompt, and that is driven by the scorecard that we allow you to structure. And so for individual questions on a scorecard, firstly, context is king. So when writing questions, you need to ensure you provide enough context so that kind of anyone, for example, a new hire on their first day in the job, could effectively pick up a scorecard, interpret exactly what needs to be checked, and score an interaction. That's the kind of level of context you need to be thinking about giving to Gen AI. The more explicit the scenario and the expectations you give, the easier it is for Gen AI to evaluate consistently. So for example, a bad question might be to just ask, did the agent troubleshoot the issue properly? AI doesn't know what you mean by properly in this case. So a better way to ask that would be, did the agent troubleshoot the customer's issue, including verifying account details, checking for known service outages, or restarting the device, or confirming configuration settings. So it's really about being a lot more explicit in what you are actually looking to check and what you mean by, in this case, properly. The next one would be around focus questions. So often in manual scoring, we see that multiple score areas can be grouped into one question. And usually this is for efficiency, where an evaluator who's familiar with a scorecard can read a kind of general question and can interpret that in one of many ways, and perhaps pass or fail, usually fail, for one of a number of reasons. With AI, we want to really split those into separate questions. So for example, rate the agent's communication with the customer, and that might be kind of made up of many things. Really, we should split that into individual questions, maybe for tone and professionalism, for clarity of information, for listening skills, for empathy. There's many things that make up kind of communication skills of the agent. And I guess this touches off one of the key benefits of using AI. Unlike manual evaluation, there are really no kind of efficiency constraints. AI actually finds it easier and prefers to do that extra work to answer individual questions rather than trying to deal with a vague kind of wide scope question. So that's kind of the second part. And then setting boundaries and giving examples to the GenAI. So we kind of want to define the parameters of the questions clearly. So this helps the model to provide more accurate responses, especially in more nuanced situations. So for example, if related to a delayed order, for example, or something like this, we might want to ask, at the beginning of the interaction, did the agent promptly apologize for an inconvenience caused by the delayed shipment? We don't want to ask, did the agent apologize for the delayed shipment? Because they may have actually technically apologized, but maybe it was after the customer expressed a lot of frustration and later down the call. So we need to kind of say at the start of the interaction and be very explicit about, when we want, when it should actually detect that message was kind of said. We also want to then provide examples of good and bad, perhaps. So in the case of a greeting, we might want to say, did the agent greet the customer with a friendly and welcoming tone? And we might want to say, answer yes if the greeting was personalized and warm. For example, good day, customer name, my name is, agent name, how may I assist you today? So we're kind of setting the parameters and giving an example of what we think a good greeting is. And GenAI will do a good job in accepting variations of that, certainly slight variations of that, and scoring consistently. Another one might be rating the agent's spelling and grammar throughout the interaction. And we kind of want to set the expectation that we want to say, give a 5 highest value if they only made 1 or 2 spelling mistakes throughout the interaction. Give a 1 rating if they made more than 7 or something. But again, it's about setting the parameters and the limits. One other thing we've in the case of examples that's relevant is in some cases checking for if the agent read a script and actually providing an example of that script through the tips. So did the agent read terms and conditions before proceeding with registration? And in the tip would actually add the full terms and conditions that the agent should read to the customer. The final piece here is providing suitable answer options. So they really should match your question. If you're asking things like, did the agent do this? That's fair enough. You can provide a yes or no. If you're asking more, rate how well the agent did this. Things like empathy, they're far more suited with GenAI to actually give you to answer based on a kind of 1 to 5 scale or even 1 to 10 scale, so you can get more granular and give the AI an opportunity to rate a 3 or a 4 and when in some cases we've seen where it's a little bit subjective, the question, forcing AI to answer yes or no is too binary, and we'll see that it often just leans too much towards yes always, even when we try to tell it when to say no. So providing a wider scale in some cases makes a lot more sense. One other thing is important is to keep answer choices simple. And again, this maybe is a lot of our customers have designed scorecards for manual use, and maybe the answer options are a little bit more wordy that a human can quickly read and select one of. With GenAI, we're sending these and we expect it to respond. The more consistent the answers or the more concise the answer choices available, the better chance we have to reliably read the response and actually convert that to one of the offered answers and create the score. So there's, in terms of what types of questions maybe work well and not so well when we talk about GenAI scoring contact center interactions, agent soft skills, things like communication, empathy, tone, it does an excellent job. Agent performance, so resolution, response times, knowledge, things like that, it also does a very good job. Processes and compliance can get difficult as long as we can kind of define the steps, when things should have happened, what should have happened, and in what sequence. It can do a good job, and the same for scripts and things that we wanted to detect and read. As long as we can define exactly what we wanted to check, it'll do a great job. A couple of areas that it obviously can't answer, anything that's outside of the conversation. So often, again, part of manual QA is to check activities or tasks that occurred outside of the conversation, maybe in another system. So did the agent update the customer's information in a CRM? Those kind of questions, obviously, we can't, we don't see as part of the conversation. Therefore, we can't ask GenAI to score. So I guess, remember, answers are only as good as the question asked. And the final point here is, ideally, we will only ask the right questions on the right conversation. So we recommend using filtering as much as possible to, say, target lists to specific types of interactions, so that you can really ask the right questions on the right interaction. For example, you might want to go granular on asking a few questions on how someone handled a refund process. Ideally, we will only ask those questions on interactions that are related to refunds. So that's kind of an important thing we need to consider. I think, yeah, that's the do's and don'ts of asking questions.
I'll follow that on nicely, Paul, with kind of, you'll agree that of all the trials and the tests that we've done with various customers across all sorts of different industries, nobody had the perfect scorecard straight from day one for automation. It works well organizationally with manual checks, but every single scorecard that we've assisted our customers with in these trials has needed changes. So don't expect to get this right first time. There is some trial and error, and your account managers like myself and your customer success executives are on hand to provide the insights and the knowledge to help you take some shortcuts into getting an automation-worthy scorecard. Not massive changes needed, nothing wholesale, but there are some tips and tricks that we can always help with. With regards to the different trials that we've run, we've done them with everything from online retailers and kind of product suppliers where your customer support is quite generic as far as it goes. And then we've got the kind of compliance heavy sectors like finance and insurance, healthcare and stuff like this, where there's a lot of script adherence required and process accuracy. So we've had a varying focus within our experience of automated scorecards, and we're able to find that some organizations are able to achieve automation on over 70% of their questions, whereas others are limited to closer to about 50%. So we'll take the conservative estimate and say that for those of you on this call, that you could expect to automate around 50% of your scorecard, of the questions on your scorecard. In general, everybody's trying to achieve the same things. They're trying to assess those soft skills and the agent performance on the interaction and also the customer sentiment. Doesn't matter what industry you're in, everybody's trying to do the same thing in terms of their QA there's just slightly different ways of asking the questions and different things to consider in those question tips that Paul has described previously. So if you think of 50% of your scorecard entry time that you're manually doing, that's now freed up. What you get is time with the QAs to focus on different areas. We've seen great leaps in kind of the ability to get these questions not only automated but performing well. We expect that not every trial is going to have questions that a GenAI like ChatGPT can answer. There's certain process-related questions. Did Brian update the CRM with the right change of address for the customer? Did Brian reach into another tool and make edits there? GenAI isn't going to be able to see into that other tool. It's not going to be able to answer those. So they're questions that you need to reserve for those manual checks. That's the kind of things that we've discovered in our trials is let's focus the scorecard on answerable questions for the automation and reserve other questions for manual checks. Paul touched on it previously. He mentioned, imagine a new hire coming into the QA team and giving them a scorecard. Would they be able to score agents straight off the bat? That is what you need to achieve when you're creating a scorecard for automation. Consider, would a stranger be able to walk into the organization and start scoring your agents? Is there too many acronyms or industry or organizational specific terminology that ChatGPT or GenAI isn't going to have context for? How do you give it that context through the tips, or do you just leave that question for manual scoring? So imagine that stranger coming in, reading that scorecard and not just being able to understand it, but be able to score your agents using it. That is a great way of relating all of that technical knowledge that we've tried to condense here and make it something that your QAs and your team will be able to understand in terms of creating new scorecards for this. So how does that change your expectations of QA? It means that you're going to be able to kind of lift the QAs out of those repetitive tasks, we keep saying this, and apply their focus on more complex issues, much like a chatbot would give agents the ability to not need to ask those repetitive questions of ID verification or account verification, things like this, and instead get straight to the crux of the issue when they're dealing with the customer and deal with the interesting meaty parts of the conversation. So we're hoping to achieve that with QAs in the same way. So as Paul alluded to, we're not filling scorecard with multi-level questions full of detail and rich understanding needed of the organization. Instead, we're splitting them up into bite-sized questions, things that are easily answered by the GenAI and that will get us some great data at the back end as well. That data is something that we want to drive and that you should be aiming for. Not just have I scored my agents, but what am I learning from it? I spoke to a customer recently who may even be on the call today, and they gave me a great piece of knowledge, which is that AI for a contact center shouldn't mean artificial intelligence. AI should, these days, really mean actionable insights. So what can I do with automated scoring that is going to give me information that I can then leverage and use to improve customer satisfaction, improve our training and product offering and our processes within the business, and keep our agents here for longer, make them happier and better at their jobs. Those actionable insights should be driving all of your decisions when it comes to automation. If we look at hang on, I've lost my track here. So we're looking at taking that 50% or more of your scorecard and automating it. Obviously, it depends on the structure of your scorecard, the types of questions you're asking, but we believe that this is going to be a kind of transformational increase in the scope of what's scored. Instead of those 2 to 5% of customer interactions getting checked manually, we could check up to 100% of those interactions and really drive amazing insights and changes within the business with the knowledge that we gain from that. And David, we might move to the next poll then, if that's good for you.
Sorry, just unmuting my line. Certainly, as Brian says, we have our second and last poll. So let me launch that now. Thanks for that, Brian. Okay. So, question is, what are your hopes or main goals for AI automation of your QA strategy? So if I can ask all the audience, please. The answer is a little bit longer. So do you want to significantly improve the efficiency and accuracy in your creative process, or to help identify trends and insights, and reduce the manual workload, and to allow your agents to focus more on the complex work? It could be everything, which just seems like it's the winning so far. So yeah, we thought that might be up high there. So I can see 60% of people have voted. So we'll give it another couple of seconds, and then I'll get the opinions of Paul and Brian. And by the way, I'm just about to share an ebook. We just recently released an ebook. If you're one of the, I can't remember the percentage at the start, who's thinking about getting they're on the road to their AI journey, or they're getting started on the journey. We've just recently released an ebook of how to get started. There's a kind of 3-step plan we have. I'll share that link at the end. You might find that helpful. Okay, so on the results of the poll, I'm just going to share them there. So yeah, over vast majority, 77% are all of the above, and then various split between the rest. I think Paul and Brian, when we were discussing this, I think we thought maybe most people might want a bit of everything. Any thoughts on that before we close it off and move on?
I'd say I would have expected all of the above. I'm surprised, I guess, that nobody said anything other, right? So no one selected the other.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because it's below the fold. It is on my screen, but yeah.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
I think if anybody does have any suggestions for other, pop them in the questions or in the chat. It'd be interesting to hear if there's any other goals that you're trying to achieve. Obviously, all of the above is a bit of a catch-all, but if there's something that's not listed there, let us know, and we'll see if it drives a bit of a conversation as well.
Great. Okay, I'll close that poll and keep the questions coming. I see the questions are popping along there nicely. So we've 2 more lessons learned. Paul and Brian, I might ask you just to be conscious of the time there, so we have enough time at the end for Q&A. So let me flip back.
So this overlaps a lot of what I've covered already, but we really see that QA is going to be changing with automation. We spoke about taking your coverage from 2% of all interactions checked manually to almost 100% full coverage. And I say almost 100% because there's going to be some interactions, if we think about a call center, there's call recordings where the person just hangs up after they've get connected, or they never make it through the IVR, things like this that aren't necessary to score. So, there's bound to be a certain percentage of your interactions that you just don't want to spend the money on scoring, and you can kind of exclude those from the QA process in general. There's also others that you have no need to, maybe they're too basic or a simple setup and you don't need to worry about scoring them. But what we want to achieve is that confidence in the data that we're getting back from our efforts and from our automated efforts as well. Currently, you can probably empathize with the QA team that's achieving 2% coverage, and they're picking and choosing which interactions to score. That brings its own inherent bias. Are we only scoring the ones where the customer was loud enough and complained enough? Are we only scoring the ones that are billing issues or just, what about the other 98 or 95% of interactions that seemingly go okay, where the customer is happy enough? We don't really get a measure on that. What does that mean? What's happy enough, and how have those interactions been? We want to get more insight of that, and we want to be able to say that the information that the QA team is feeding back to the agents and back to the rest of the business, we want to say that that information is robust, that the insights that we're getting is based on all of our customer interactions, not just a small subset that we've pre-selected based on some interesting variables. So we want to make sure that even though we can automate a huge amount of your scoring, we want to make sure that the human oversight is still really important. What good is, let's use the example of the analogy of a new hire QA or a stranger coming in and scoring using this scorecard. You could throw 50 new QAs at it, but unless you're checking their work and you're evaluating the evaluator and you're making sure that they're applying answers to these questions accurately, we can't be sure that there's much return on investment in terms of their efforts. So it's the same with automated scoring. We want somebody now within the QA team, most likely, to kind of be an owner of these scorecards and make sure that they're adjusting the language and the phrasing, the thresholds, and thresholds on the scorecard for scores and so on, making sure that they're relevant and they continue to evolve with the changing customer expectations. So this is not a one size fits all, not a one and done kind of application. You want to make sure that your scorecards are evolving with the business, whether automated or manual efforts. And there's going to need to be somebody to look after the lists of interactions. Do we apply the same scorecard to everything? Do we apply specific scorecards, specific questions to specific lists? And there's various reasons why you might want to do it one way or the other. It's all depends on your own business needs. That's something we can help with advising on as well. Another thing to consider is, how do I interpret? How do I read and digest all this new information that's coming? I had a QA team working day in, day out, and we do a huge amount of reporting based on only 2% of customer interactions. Well, using a tool like Scorebuddy BI for the business intelligence or another advanced reporting suite, it's going to be really important to analyze that data. It's to not just be happy enough with the scoring, but make sure that you're asking the right questions of the data and getting insightful analysis done as well. So there's another challenge there. You've got the ability to control the scorecards and then make sure that you're doing something useful with the information that you're getting out of it. And we want to balance the automation with the human expertise. QAs, we envisage them being able to change some of the focus of their role. If you have a large QA team, you might be able to divide up some tasks for them. Some would be looking into the BI side, the insights analysis, and really digging into the detail and the data that they're getting out of it. Someone else might be the prompt engineer or the scorecard manager, where they are making sure that the scorecards are phrased correctly and the questions are fair and accurate and so on. And then maybe there's others who have a penchant for coaching and they really want to spend more time with the agents. Or you've got a smaller team and you're able to give them more time to do all of these things. I think as far as agent performance goes, that ability to have more face-to-face time with a QA and with their supervisor is going to be really valuable in terms of managing and improving their performance over time. This is what we mean by actionable insights, is taking QA, freeing up their time, and allowing them to spend more time doing the stuff that really, really drives performance and matters to the people that they work with.
Thanks, Brian. So I'm very conscious of time and want to leave some space for QA, so I'll try and fly through this. Predictions for the future. There's going to be advances in these Gen AI models. Every 6 months, there's a new model comes out. There's many models already available. OpenAI's ChatGPT were the first movers, but Google, Meta, Amazon all have their own models. And then there's also AI-focused companies like Anthropic, which have the Claude model, and the kind of best-in-class changes nearly on a kind of every couple of months. A new model gets launched and it's proven to be higher quality. So the models will get better. The models are going to get cheaper as well. Cost is a big factor here, and some of the new models can often cost 10 or 20 times more than, for example, the GPT 3.5. The latest model is 10 to 20 times more expensive to run. And when you compare that to if you were hiring someone and candidate A was 50K per year, candidate B was 500K, is the kind of level of comparison we're talking about, being 10, even 20 times more expensive. So it is a huge impact. So the other thing is, and this is becoming less and less of a problem as these models get more advanced, is token and context limitations. So the first version of ChatGPT 3.5 or GPT 3.5 had a 4,000 token limit. That wasn't a whole lot. When we're talking about a voice call, often that's only about 5 minutes of transcribed conversation, so not that long in terms of if we wanted to test. Those limits are increasing steadily, and we're already testing with models that are capable of processing and storing context up to 200,000 tokens, which is equivalent to an entire novel, 400 or 500 page novel. So huge amounts of so those problems maybe won't be, they'll be shortly resolved, I would say. In terms of innovations and advancements in AI tools outside of the core models, knowledge base integration and how other data can be pulled and incorporated into text. They're kind of advances that we see coming very quickly, and we're already starting projects on that. Dynamic AI triage, so that classification of different, like taking a first pass on an interaction, determining what it's about, and then passing it on to the relevant scorecard. All of that being kind of handled dynamically. We have initiatives starting on those areas too. And then the increased scope, I think, of data that is being integrated and considered. So as we kind of alluded to, AI can only understand or use what it's given, and so we see that there being more and more of the CRM, the activities that happened in third-party tools, being pulled in for analysis and giving additional context along with the conversation for GenAI to score. And then for us, for planning for the future in Scorebuddy, we've tried to stay as agnostic as possible and be able to adapt to this rapidly changing QA landscape. So we haven't committed to any one model. We've already kind of demonstrated internally the ability to switch between different models as needed for different customer requirements. We see a lot of we've built for reusability. So we're using the same models and architecture for auto scoring that we are for our new AI translation service. So we're really trying to build for the future there and set the foundations in the right way. And then deeper integration into in the case of Scorebuddy, into the entire application. So we really see that anywhere there's human input in the application, we see as a need to potentially augment or enhance the user workflow, whether that's when doing manual scoring, having an ability to, based on the answers you've selected, quickly press a button and autofill a score kind of summary comment based on maybe the answers you've selected, creating draft coaching sessions based on a score that was created either by AI or manual. So many opportunities across the application. As I said, we see any touch points where a human has to kind of generate some content is an opportunity for AI to assist. And then there's the areas of insights, analysis, and recommendation again. So AI is very good at looking at large volumes of data and determining certain things. So we see opportunities there. Over to you, Dave.
Great. Super. Thanks, Paul and Brian. So we have about 4 minutes left. We're not going to get through all these questions, but we may do is create a blog or we get something out there to summarize them. So yeah, thanks for all the questions. I won't talk anymore. I'll just get into the questions. So first question from Paul. Has this trial been based solely on chat, email, or has voice been done? Maybe Paul, you could answer that one.
Yeah, so we've done across all three. Voice has been done. There's yeah, I mean, there's an additional level of complexity when we're dealing with voice, and it is the quality of transcription. So the solution doesn't do the transcription and the scoring in one. We actually have a new AI transcription service that we run to convert the audio into text, and then we pass that all seamlessly through to auto scoring. So it happens in one effectively, but it's two different services that are being used. So there is a challenge in terms of quality. We've actually seen quality is pretty high. It's usually around specific words that it's incorrectly picking up, but there are mechanisms for us to progress that and enhance the quality there. So yeah, the answer is yes. It's all channels.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Next one from Destiny. Can AI score an agent's call notes? For example, how well did the agent summarize the call?
We are seeing in some cases, depending on the system, we do see internal notes as part of the conversation, and we are passing them through for GenAI to score them. So there is internal notes is one thing we've seen. It depends on the integration, whether we're getting that data. Anything we get from related to the case, we can use to send to GenAI.
Great. I see, Brian, thanks for answering some of those questions there. So a couple more questions. I'm curious about cost considerations. Can you provide some insights into a typical investment required to implement Scorebuddy AI?
It's very much dependent on the volume you want to test, the length of your interactions, the size of your scorecard. So there's three major factors there that would influence the cost. From a Scorebuddy perspective, we have tiers that are to start a very reasonable introduction into it, and all the way up to allowing for full coverage for large organizations as well. So we have tiers that should suit every organization. The only question really is how much you want to test.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we're 1 minute. So this came up a couple of times around security. So security is top priority for our contact center. Can you explain where our data goes when using Scorebuddy AI?
So we don't send any data to OpenAI in the case of using GPT 3.5 or Anthropic in the case of using Claude models. They are kind of self-hosted within our infrastructure. So these models are hosted on Microsoft Azure's cloud hosting services that are kind of dedicated to us. So the data never leaves our infrastructure and never goes back to train any models or anything like that.
Great. Yeah, there was a couple of questions there around the recording of the webinar. It'll be sent out within 24 hours. If you're on this, you're going to get an email, which is great. And then around signing up for a trial, or what's the process in signing up for a trial, or what kind of support is available. And again, if you end this, we'll pop up a quick survey, and you can click a box there to say you're interested in a trial, or you can go to the Scorebuddy website. We'll walk you through. We don't have the time now to walk you through the whole process, but you can sign up for a trial through the website, and you'll more than likely talk to Paul at some stage. Yeah. So thanks. Yeah, there's a few more questions there that I think, Brian, you covered. If not, we'll get the answers out some way, maybe through a blog or a follow-up conversation. But yeah, I'll end by thanking Paul and Brian for the great insights. I know we rushed some of them, but there's lots of data. If you find it very useful, put a comment in the survey. We may try and spin up another webinar. I did share a link to the ebook. There's a few other ebooks that we've launched, focus on AI. So please find them through the website, and I see there's a few people giving a round of applause. So yeah, thanks to everyone, and again, thanks to you for dialing in and dedicating 1 hour of your time. Hopefully you found it really useful. So I'll leave it at that, and looking forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Thanks again. Bye bye.